I know there is a 6.5 hour version, like the supercut of this film, and I saw that you were gonna like put some newly shot material in there. So what kind of
news goes fast?
It does, man. It's rapid.
I said it yesterday, and I pulled it out of my ass. How does this work?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 8 of The Fourth Wall. I am your host, Griffin Schiller, and this is the show where we break down the fourth wall of the film industry as we get an inside look through our conversations with industry professionals ranging from directors, actors, you name it. This show is, of course, part of the Playlist Podcast Network, where you can find our weekly film discourse show discussing the latest releases along with the rest of our show catalog, such as Be Real, Indie Beat, and much more. Whatever your fix is, we got you covered. Before we get into this week's episode, I do want to thank you all for the warm reception you gave last week's episode, my interview with Bill Hader. It's one of our most successful episodes. You all seem to really enjoy it, and so I just really want to thank you again for sharing it, for listening to it, and all that good stuff. Your support of the show means a lot, so just thank you once again. And as I alluded to last week, we're not finished with our It Chapter 2 coverage, as this week we're going to be getting into a full spoiler conversation over the film with director Andy Muschietti. Andy first garnered the attention of many with his 2013 debut Mama. The film was based on his 3-minute short of the same name, which also piqued the interest of Guillermo del Toro, who went on to executive produce the feature. Muschietti's work and success with Mama proved him to be a real emerging talent in the horror genre, and it's very easy to see why he was brought on for the adaptation of Stephen King's It. Embarking on a massive undertaking, Muschietti brought to life King's novel for a new generation, amassing both critical and commercial success as 2017's It became the highest grossing horror film of all time. And it's only fitting that It Chapter 2 is hot on its heels, as the film already has the second highest horror movie opening of all time. Now, I'm not kidding when I say I think It Chapter 2 has one of the most satisfying conclusions I've seen to a film really in quite some time. And I think the key to that was that Andy really understood that in order for the second part of this movie to work, he needed to cut out some of the more outlandish material in King's original novel and maintain focus on the losers and their journey. And during our conversation, we discussed precisely that, how he was able to craft such a satisfying conclusion, and how he was also able to craft some incredibly seamless and inventive scene transitions, the challenges of making a 2-hour and 45-minute horror epic, reinventing the character of Ritchie, and in relation to the film's meta-commentary about creators who can't properly end their stories, his favorite movie that couldn't quite nail the ending. I really enjoyed his answer to that one. It was very appropriate given the question. We also touch ever so briefly on his upcoming project, The Flash, and what we can expect out of his 6.5-hour supercut of It. Before we get started, I do want to remind you all one more time that this is a spoiler discussion, so if you have not seen It Chapter 2, go out, go see the movie. It's great, and then come back and listen to this episode. All right, you've been warned. Let's do this. Let's get into my conversation with Andy Muschietti. Things that I've always observed about the second half of the book, or really the adult portion of the book, is that it's I've always found that it was probably the trickiest to adapt, just because of how much is going on. The mythology really lets loose, and you kind of have to live up to the bar set by what was going on with them as kids. So did you find the process harder to navigate this time around, or did it kind of come easier to you given your work in Chapter 1?
No, I don't think it was harder. It was like the equally hard challenge to do, because basically it's so much about translating a book story, literary story, to a film language, which is always a challenge, especially in such a big, massive book. Yeah. But it's also fun. Yeah. Because you get to you get to exercise, that that muscle of selection and also figure out what's important. And in that exercise, you really understand everything more about the story and about the characters and everything. So, and it's also exciting because it's definitely two different languages. You see that in the book. It's the events are looser. They are interrupted by events in the past, interludes from Mike talking about the history of dairy. So it's all like an interesting patchwork, an interesting experience. Well, when it comes to the film, you really have to turn those screws of tension. You have to make events that are consequential and squeeze the action into almost like a real time thing. Sure. And also as a movie, as an experience, you have to escalate, the action, the pacing, and the adventure element of it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and there was a few questions I wanted to ask you actually regarding some of that, but this is a 2 hour and 45-minute film or so. It's like it is a horror epic, and it's not something that we usually get too often. And I'm curious, what are some of the challenges in being able to maintain the audience, how are you able to kind of keep them on edge for such a long period of time?
There's different things. I think what I was mentioning before about the consequentiality of this version.
Yeah.
One event leads to the other, and there's an obstacle, and they have to go through it to get to the to the goal. But the main goal is something that is established at the beginning of the movie, which is killing it. How do you kill it? So there's, of course, that moment where you think about the story. The script is the next step where everything is important. Then you make the movie, then you're editing the movie, and you realize that you have a very big movie. We started with a script that was 160 pages or something.
Yeah.
And then comes the real test, which is you have a movie, and what does that movie feel like when you're watching it? And then you realize that there's nothing more important than pacing, and because you don't want to bore people,
right? Well, and that was one of the things that I really liked about this was for such a long movie, I never felt the length because I was really locked into the characters and their journeys and going to get the totems and stuff like that.
Yeah. The tokens game, everything that is about a ritual and about a trial is always very very engaging for the audience. For sure. So it's a bit of a device that I really wanted to throw in there, and basically raise the expectations of how will this work or not.
Right. Well, and through that, you were also able to bring back the younger actors. You were able to bring back the kids, and you were kind of able to weave in the flashbacks similarly to how the book did, which I thought that was genius. I love the transitions there, which by the way, this is going to be a spoiler discussion, so feel free to talk about whatever. Yeah. But the way you were able to transition from the scenes and stuff like that, I wonder if you can kind of talk about that and what you kind of look for when you're making these transitions from past to present.
Well, the transitions are probably the most fun thing that I've done. That I was able to do in this movie, because it's the magic part of storytelling, and it gives you the chance to be really creative and inventive. Because you're basically blending two timelines into one shot. And it's always exciting for me. And it really, really, gives you the chance also to leave a little bit of your mark as a narrator.
Yeah.
As opposed to, a classical transparent cut to the past or, so I really had fun. I didn't want to repeat the method.
Yeah. I noticed that everything was different. It was like a puzzle piece. There was the ending one where I forget what it was exactly. What was the very end one? It was like the
very end one is it goes from the photo booth strip to the kids riding their bicycles, but it doesn't. That wasn't quite a transition. One of them is in the clubhouse when Ben falls down as an adult and looks up and calls his friends, and you expect like the older losers to come down. And it's the kids. And that's magic. That's the magic of cinema.
That's textbook.
I still see it now with the score and everything, and working with people that understands the vision and really are really in the same page with the tone and the spirit. Ben Wallfish did a beautiful score on that part. So the transition is fully, it's done by every single element there, and it's the same shot. You see adult Ben on the floor, and when the camera goes up, you see Sophia Lillis come down instead of Jessica Chastain. The music like turns into something, magic and ethereal. What else? Oh, there's an interesting one when after they remember the fight, you see, Big Bill and Beverly on their bikes, and Bill takes off. Camera sort of pulls him back a little bit, and then he bikes off out of the frame, and we see after he leaves, he exits the frames. We see Jessica, adult Beverly, looking back at him, and that was fun to do because it wasn't only about characters; it was about the background. If you see if you see the shot a couple of times, you will see that the cars. The whole environment changes. The cars on the back are from the 1980s in the first half of the shot, and then when we discover Jessica, you start seeing cars from this age. I mean, not that you have to focus on that,
right? No, but it's those little details that make those transitions work so well.
Yeah.
Something else I want to kind of touch on are the changes you make, because there are some changes you made and there's stuff you omitted. I think my favorite one was what you did with Ritchie's character, because it really hammered home the emotional impact of that ending. So I'm kind of curious, where did that sort of idea originate from, and how early in the process did you know that was where you wanted to go with Ritchie?
Well, I basically it was a game of exploring each of the characters' fear, each of the characters' journey, each of the characters' trauma, and I was left a little. There was an empty slot there for Ritchie, because of course we have a victim of abuse, which is Beverly, who keeps repeating the cycle of getting together with loving men that abuse her. We have Eddie, who is he's like subjected to a overprotective mom, and he's a coward, and he's still married to his mom. So we see all these characters that are pretty much defined, and they're somehow like they've been inspired by the book. In the case of Ritchie, there was a bit of an emptiness there. There was, of course, like the mechanism of someone that uses humor to basically be noticed in this world. A kid that was probably neglected and ignored in his family, and invented humor as a way of saying I'm here. But that didn't translate too much into the future and to the adulthood of this character. So I wanted to go deeper. And one of the fears of all this palette of fears, the fear of being exposed, and showing who you really are to the world. That is something that is something like a character like Ritchie, who was basically is hiding his sexual identity because he had a traumatic event where he was like humiliated and pointed out, and he doesn't want to repeat that, and that's why he stays in the closet. And he stayed, and not only that, but also like built a persona around him, being like a celebrity, comedian, who's telling jokes about his girlfriend and masturbating to his girlfriend's friend on Facebook. So I thought it was a very valid and a very human conflict to have, and trauma, and why not?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I thought it just fit right in there so naturally. That was my favorite part about it.
Yeah, it also taps with, of course, with over hovering perception that there somewhere in the way there was a Eddie Ritchie relationship. That relationship is never confirmed in the book, of course.
Right.
And it's definitely not confirmed in the movie. There's no signs that this love was actually reciprocated by Eddie, but I love how it's laid there in the movie. I think it's one of the most surprising, probably. Of the beats.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm happy it's there.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other parts that I really liked was the the running bit of Bill writing these great books but not being able to stick the ending. I thought that was it was very meta in its own right. And I'm curious for you, what are some of your favorite books or films that you really like but they didn't quite nail that ending?
All right, here we go. In general, when I like a movie, I forgive everything about it. I've been accused of making a decent movie that had a horrible ending with Mama. But it's for me. I still see it, and at the moment I connect the most is the ending. Because we humanize the monster, and there's that very rare ending of two kids that are separated and one dies, and Mama is part of it. So anyway, I would say that is one of them.
Of course,
I guess
sure,
I guess I like to self-reference my own movies, but you caught me unprepared for that one. Let me see. Great movie that I love that has a bad ending. Okay, I might get back to you.
That's fine. I mean,
sorry.
It's just funny because I know when the book for it came out, a lot of people were the same sort of way. They were kind of mixed on the book that they love the kids stuff, but when you get to the adult stuff, it kind of teetered a little bit. And it's weird because I think what you were able to do is you were able to capture the heart of that first part and stick the landing, and it was just the ending especially, well, really the third act, but the ending especially, where everything's really coming together, it just feels, it's just one of the most satisfying conclusions to a film I've seen in quite some time. So for you, what was the key to nailing that down?
Well, the key was, sticking to the emotional, intimate part of the whole thing, which was basically finding a resolution for these characters.
Yeah.
As individuals and as a group, as a collective. So I decided to keep it, very, very intimate, and it's all about feelings, emotions. Of course, if you follow the book by more literally, there's a big, gigantic disaster in the movie, which in the book, where it's the destruction of Derry, the sinkhole, the flood, the standpipe rolling down the hills. I did not want to go there because it definitely takes from what's important, which is the emotional impact of the ending. And it's proven every movie that I love has one of those, especially the ones that really imprinted me in the 80s. When you see The Never-Ending Story, for instance, there is some level of mayhem there, but it's very related to the emotional journey of the characters. E.T.
Yeah,
E.T. is probably best example of that.
Yeah.
Where there's not a dry eye on the in the room.
If you're not crying by the end of E.T., there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. So that was very important. And also, I wanted to stick, on the other aspect of your question, which is, why didn't you stick to the, bizarro, supernatural, surreal other side?
Yeah.
I wanted to stick to the perspective of the human elements, through the characters, to this reality seen through the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Just the idea that there's another side is enough,
Right.
to generate that mystery. But I wanted to keep it cryptic, which is something that probably Stephen King manages to do for a long time.
Yeah.
But the end is a real huge blowout where he, basically reveals the macroverse, and we see like Bill like flying in the void.
Yeah, I guess.
And seeing the turtle. I wanted to avoid that, but not because it's bad. I think it's just like the movie turns into a different thing.
It really takes on like another identity almost.
Yeah, it becomes like a fantasy.
Yeah,
film.
exactly. Yeah.
Probably the way that the Dark Tower sort of has, which is that Dark Tower is a fantasy movie. This is more a movie about human characters,
right,
that are confronting a evil force that the less you know about it, the more magnetized to it you will be.
Yeah.
And Stephen King does it so well by dosifying the information of who Bob Gray is, Bob Gray, and all the interludes and all these super like cryptic things that never find really a resolution. Someone saw a clown there, and Bob Gray, this thing. So that's a lesson of how to maintain the mystery, not revealing everything. And sometimes you hear audiences, saying, "Oh, we need more backstory. We need to see more Pennywise." And then the problem is that when you show them more, they don't like it.
It kind of loses its magic. Yeah, you're right.
It loses the magic.
Yeah.
It's like precisely. It's like a magician revealing the trick.
Yeah.
Like you ask, "How did you do it? How did you do it?" And then he shows you. It's like, oh, it's disappointing.
Right. Right. Well, that's why those scenes. The one where he catches the firefly and he gets the girl with the birthmark on her face, and then the one in the fun house, which I loved the fun house, how you were able to utilize mirrors and stuff. Was that kind of like tricky to navigate, or?
The fun house. No, it was easy to create. I always wanted it came from the concern that probably Bill Denver wasn't getting enough payoff from being sort of the leader of being the leader of the losers.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a good idea to basically aggravate his guilt, and Pennywise basically using his guilt to basically destroy his spirit. And the worst thing he can do is basically recreate the Georgie event.
Yeah.
Or when he was a kid, he killed Georgie because you weren't there, Billy. As if that wasn't bad enough, he basically recreates. He takes another Georgie, which is the kid that lives in his house, and does the same thing, and kills. Well, I don't want to teasers.
He kills.
Basically, in the funhouse, basically Pennywise butchers that little kid in front of Bill, and Bill cannot do anything because he's behind a glass.
It was one of the more brutal kills for sure.
Yeah.
I do want to just quickly move on to upcoming projects next. Obviously, you're kind of attached to The Flash or something like that. So I'm curious, can you kind of tease anything regarding that upcoming project? What kind of ideas are you circulating around?
I really cannot talk about The Flash too much because we're starting it.
Okay.
And there's a lot of exciting stuff about it. I'm working with a writer right now, but I can't anticipate
no, that's fair.
too much.
If
maybe in a couple of months.
Yeah, I imagine so. If you will indulge me, just one more question, because I know there is a 6.5 hour version, like the supercut of this film, and I saw that you were gonna put some newly shot material in there. So what kind of
news goes fast.
It does, man. It's rapid.
I said it yesterday, and I pulled it out of my ass. How does this work?
What kind of new material can we expect from that?
So yeah, this is an idea. We're in early talks with the studio to do it, but my big fantasy is to put the two, basically cut the two movies together, add all of the scenes that were lifted for length purposes in the release. So make a bigger, a big experience of it. And also shooting a couple of extra scenes that I'd like to to see on this bigger experience.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait to watch it. I mean, a 6.5 hour version of this film just sounds nuts, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, man. I mean, in the age of like binging, where people just like watch series for like 7, 8 hours, and they just barely notice that they've been like spending all that time.
Yeah.
This is nothing.
Wow, it's like, why not? Well, it'd probably be a good place to put it on the HBO streaming service or the Warner Brothers.
HBO Max.
Yeah, HBO Max. Yeah. Oh, maybe that's where it's going.
I don't know. Where did I hear that from you? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Listen, I really appreciate it, Andy.
Thank you so much, guys.
Time,
yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. That was my conversation with Andy Muschietti. It was really delightful. And just a quick side note here, the interview actually took place in this weird dressed up haunted house sort of thing. It's where the junket actually took place. And so it was just a really immersive interview. I felt as if I was back in Derry and there was just like a weird echo in the room. And it was very fitting for the conversation that we had. And I think it made the interview that much more fun. It Chapter 2 is now playing in theaters everywhere, and if you've already seen the film, which I'm assuming you have if you listen to this conversation, go see it again. It's a great movie that you can only experience on the big screen for a limited time, so take advantage of it. And if you haven't seen the film, well, we spoiled it for you, but hopefully that encourages you to go check it out regardless. But the most important thing is I want to hear from you all. I want to hear your thoughts on It Chapter 2 down in the comment section of wherever you're listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Playlist Podcast Network for more episodes of The Fourth Wall, along with the rest of our diverse film-centric catalog. And if you feel so inclined, you really want to go the extra mile, we'd love it if you drop us a rating and a review, as it greatly helps the show get noticed and lets me know what you all are loving and what you think we can improve upon. I don't have a guest lined up for the next episode quite yet, but you can expect something very soon. But until then, if you like me and you like what I have to say, you can follow me on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in to this It Chapter 2 spoiler discussion, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.